Wait, flat.
All right, so we are live on Facebook and YouTube. Good evening and Dhamma greetings to all of you, to our venerable colleague monks and our lay devotees. So before we begin our discussion, let us pay our respect and homage to the Buddha. Let's recite Namo Tassa 3 times together. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. I pay my respect and homage to him, the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the fully enlightened Buddha. Okay, so it is still the Vesak month. All the venerable monks and nuns and the lay devotees are busy with their Vesak celebrations. And last weekend, I have seen different temples in the United States, even here in Canada, also in Europe, celebrating Vesak. And we are still feeling the Vesak sentiment throughout this month of May. So I will, before we begin the discussion, I would like to introduce our venerable monks to our audience. And so today we have Bhante Yogavacha Rahula joining the discussion from Washington, D.C. And then we have Venerable Bhante Katugastu Paratana Naika Tero joining the discussion from Washington, D.C. And then we have Venerable Ananda Kalubovila joining the discussion from Cambridge, Ontario, Canada. And then we have Venerable Bhante Sanata Vihari joining the discussion from Los Angeles. You call Santa Fe, right? Yeah, and we have Venerable Master Shanta Sobana joining the discussion from Los Angeles. Then we have Venerable Digale Somwangsha joining the discussion from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And then we have Venerable Bhante Jinananda joining the discussion from Ottawa, Canada. And of course, all of you know who I am, and you see where I'm from, Toronto, Canada. It is such a great joy to have all the venerable monks for this bi-weekly Sutra discussion. So I would like to give a warm welcome to our venerable monastics for coming together to have this very productive and meaningful discussion. I also would like to welcome all our lay devotees who are joining this bi-weekly Sutra discussion. Some of you are here on Zoom platform. And also, I would like to welcome all the lay friends and devotees who are watching this program live on Facebook and YouTube. So today we are going to have a very interesting discussion. And last week we had a very important discussion regarding Vesak, and Bhikkhu Bodhi brought up a question, and Bhante Rahula, Yogavacha Rahula brought another question. I think what I felt from the audience, majority of the people were interested in knowing what these three auspicious events really mean to us. How does it apply to us, the monastics? I see we all did a good job. So today we would like to focus on another question that came from one of our friends who wanted to know can a meditator attain awakening, final gnosis, without having practiced the jhanas? This is based on a sutra from known as Susima Sutta, and we will get into this discussion, this question. But first, I would like to make a kind request from all of you, from our devotees who are watching online. If it is possible, please share this Facebook Live and YouTube Live program on your social media timelines for the greater benefits of your friends and colleagues. This is a very interesting discussion we are going to have with Venerable monks. And so please be kind enough to share this program. And I see Bhante Pemaratana is also here. Bhante Pemaratana from Pittsburgh, United States. So Bhante Pemaratana, welcome to our discussion. And now I would like to kindly invite Venerable Ananda Kalubovila to give us a summary of today's sutta that we are going to discuss. Venerable Ananda.
Bantes, or the Venerable says, I will just go through the Susima Sutta, and I missed the last week's discussion, so I think it was a very interesting discussion. I'm going to rewind and watch it again. So Susima Sutta, we find it on the linked discourses, Samyutta Nikaya. Out of all the shorter discourses we find in Samyutta Nikaya, this happened to be a little longer one, relatively longer compared to the other discourses. And this takes place in the bamboo grove, Squirrel's sanctuary. And I think the way it starts is very beautiful. It sort of makes you visualize what kind of a place it might have been in the bamboo grove, and then there's Squirrel's sanctuary, Kalandaka Niwapa. So then the story, the discussion happens around this character called Susima, who's also a wanderer. I think back in the day, the Upanishad period, there were a lot of wanderers who were seeking for moksha in India. And Susima happened to be one of those wanderers, seekers, alongside with his other wanderers. However, there was this distinct difference between the group of Susima and the group of Lord Buddha. They noticed that Lord Buddha was special. He was worshipped, he was revered, honored, venerated, and given a lot of homage. And most likely, it seems that Susima's group or the other wanderers that he was with, they were not getting a lot of homage in terms of their basic needs. So a monastic or a ascetic at the time would need four basic things to live. That's robes, alms food, lodging, and medicine. Those are the fundamental requirements of any person to live a minimalistic lifestyle, and then still be on a path of wandering, seeking. So Susima's group, I think they were a little deprived of all these things, where Buddha and the disciples, they had a lot of homage and a lot of veneration around Buddha. So then Susima wanted to sort of see why Buddha is getting so much attention, and again the purity of his intention. So then they also saw that there's many Buddhas and there are many Arahats. Arahat meaning that people who have declared Arhat, or they have declared that they have attained the supreme bliss of Nibbana. So I think usually what would happen, that you could get venerated when you declare yourself that you are a venerated person or a prophet or a messenger, a messiah. It happens everywhere. So there was a lot of rumor, that there was scandal, that a lot of people started saying, I am Arhat and I am Arhat. So people were wondering, but Buddha was selected, he was much revered. So then Susima initially might not have had the purest intention when he came to Buddha. Maybe he was more attracted to the homage, the robes, the alms giving, alms food, and the other physical things. But when he came there, he saw that many Arahats are declaring their Arahatship. That they say, we discern that birth is ended, the holy life fulfilled, the task done. There's nothing further for the sake of this world. So when Susima started hearing these declarations, he was inquisitive and he wanted to ask, so what do you really mean? And then he started asking a set of questions, about 8 questions, about what your arahatship means. So the first question he asked is that, do you wield manifold supernormal powers? Or basically, do you hold, or do you possess, do you display multiple manifold supernormal powers? So the supernormal powers would be, having been one, you become many. Having been many, you become one. You appear, you vanish, you go unimpeded through walls, you dive and out of the earth as if it was water, you walk on water without sinking as if it was a dry land, sitting cross-legged and flying through the air like a winged bird. So if you look at it, it's it's very magical looking, or the Irdipada, that so these are physically, humanly impossible things in the current realm that we know. So the first question he asked is, when you say that you have attained nirvana, when you say you have you are an arahat, does that mean that you can fly, you can vanish, you can go through walls and walk on water? Then the arahat said, no, my friend. And then he asked, so does that mean that you got this ability to or the power of hearing things that only not only man can hear, but also the other divine can hear? Did you have the divine ear element, purified and surpassing the human? Then the monk said, no, my friend. So then he asked, do you discern a mind with passion as a mind with passion, a mind without passion as a mind without passion? Now I will keep going on this format, because we see it in many places, many other places in the Pali Canon as well. So the question he asked was, do you see or do you discern a mind with passion as a mind with passion, and a mind without passion, a mind without passion, a mind with aversion as a mind with aversion, a mind without aversion as a mind without aversion, a mind with delusion as a mind with delusion, or a mind without delusion as a mind without delusion? So on he goes on. I will not read the entire text, it's very long. It's basically, do you know the state of your mind? Now, the same extract we find in many other places in the Pali Canon, especially if we go to Mahasatipatthana Sutra, for example. It tells you about the great frames of references, Mahasatipatthana Sutra. So Mahasatipatthana Sutra divides it to Kayanupassana, Vedananupassana, Chittanupassana, Dhammanupassana, which means body, feelings, mind, and mental qualities, your awareness about that. So broadly speaking, Satipatthana is, I think, loosely translated as mindfulness also these days, but mindfulness has many nuances in the current world. So I will not get into detail what exactly that is, but what we find is that under the Chittanupassana, the mind part of the Mahasatipatthana Sutta, you find the same verses repeated. So when Susima asked Arahats about this part, it most likely seems that it was a common practice back in the day among the other ascetics, among the other seekers and wanderers as well. And then the fourth question he asked is, do you recollect your manifold past lives? Do you have the ability to look back and then find what type of man you were? I had such a name, belonged to such a clan, had such appearance, this was my food and this was my experience. Do you have that power? So again, I think that was a practice back in the day. People were known to look for like one lifetime behind, two lifetimes behind, hundreds and thousands of lifetimes behind, and many eons and cosmic contractions and expansions behind. Again, that we find in the Vedic philosophy as well as in Buddhism, that the world is sort of going through a continuous contraction and an expansion. So there's a destruction of the world and there's another forming of the world. So the cycle keeps on going that way. And our lives are happening within one cycle, but there are people who have developed their mind so far that they could even see beyond a contraction and an expansion of the universe or the cosmos. So then the monk said, the attained monk said, no, my friend, that's also not the case. With our attainment, that is also not what we do. And then he asked, do you have a divine eye where you see beings passing away and reappearing? Do you discern how they are inferior, superior, beautiful and ugly, fortunate, unfortunate, in accordance with the karma they did. So it was again another popular belief in India back in the day, that in this cycle of samsara, what you do affects your next life, and your good deeds, meritorious deeds, bad deeds, they affect the future life. So the question was, do you have a divine eye that you could see what will happen to these beings? One said, no, Susima. And then the next question was, then having known thus, having seen thus, do you dwell touching your body, the peaceful emancipation, the formless states beyond the form? So here he is talking about the jhanas, the formless jhanas. So then I think again, this was a very wide practice back in the day in India, where people had form-based jhanas from first jhana to fourth jhana, and then jhanas of formlessness, arupa dhyana and rupa dhyana. So the monks who are meditating, Susima asked, is that the case? Is that what you're doing? And the answer was, no, that's not. So then Susima wanted to know what exactly it was. And then he approached Buddha and asked, Buddha, could you tell me, or the Arhats, could you tell me, what do you do with your attainment? What is your realization? And then the answer given was, the first part is a brief explanation, and then there's a detailed explanation, 2 parts to it. So another word he used here is released through discernment, or panya vimukta, released through discernment. So this liberation, this release comes through discernment, or panya vimukta. Now panya again has many nuances. I think a correct or a more accurate word would be realization or understanding, which is again very tricky when we try to sort of give nuances to this or define these Pali words to English or to Sinhala for that matter, panya vimukta. So then the long answer, or the short answer, the brief answer was, first Susima, there is knowledge of the regularity of the Dhamma, and then within brackets the translator has said it's the dependent co-arising. It's the interpretation of the translator. So the first answer is that Susima, there is a knowledge of the regularity of Dhamma, and after which there is a knowledge of unbinding. So I will recite the Pali verse, Pubboko Susima Dhammatiti Jnana Pacha Nibbane Jnananti. The first part, the previous part was the Dhammatiti Jnana, and the second one, which comes after, is the Nibbane Jnananti. So 2 words. How it goes in English is that the first, what these arhats will find is, there is a knowledge of regularity of Dhamma, which is within brackets, it says dependent co-arising. And following, after which there is a knowledge of unbinding, Nibbane Jnananti. And then obviously Susima did not understand, like most of us here might not have understood it. So then Susima asked, please provide me with a detailed explanation. So then the detailed explanation was, Susima says, I don't understand the detailed meaning of the Blessed One's brief statement. It would be good if the Blessed One could speak in such a way that I would understand its detailed meaning. Buddha then starts questioning. So it's very interesting. Buddha then starts questioning Susima instead of giving an answer. I think that's another beautiful way of answering to a particular question, because we find it in many ancient Oriental philosophies that instead of right away giving an answer, you keep asking questions from the student. So this realization belongs to the student instead of telling something. So then the Buddha keeps asking the questions. Is form any physical phenomena? Is it constant or inconstant? Rupa nichangva anichangva. Then Susima says it's inconstant, Lord, anicca bhante. And is that which is something which is inconstant, something which is not permanent, is it easeful or stressful? Yang pananicca dukkang vasa tan sukhang vati. Then Susima says, it's stressful, my lord. So if something is stressful, and if it's not fitting to regard what is inconstant, stressful subject to change as, this is mine, this is me, this is what I am, is that a good thing to do? Etava mama, eso hamasmi, eso me attati. So again, I would stop and explain a little. In order to understand this question, we need to go back to the more prevalent idea back in the day in India about what enlightenment is. So the Vedic philosophy believed that the self, Atma, is an indestructible, a constant, and a permanent thing, the Atma or the Paramatma. And Buddha's proposal or the proposition of Buddha was that accepting your Atma as real and constant and permanent is not right, it's incorrect. So everything that we listen to or we go through in Buddhist discourse, it sort of brings you towards that way. The self is not what you think, and it's not a eternal, it's not a permanent thing. So that's how the question starts. The form. So here, when Buddha meant the form, he's talking about the 5 aggregates: the form, sensation, etc., etc. So the first question starts with form. He asked the question: is form constant or inconstant? Susima says, inconstant, Lord. And is that which is inconstant easeful or stressful? If something is inconstant, it is stressful, Lord. And if it is stressful, if it is inconstant, then is it worth saying, this is mine, this is myself, this is what I am? So that's the answer given by, or the question asked by Buddha, and the answer given by Susima. So then it goes to feeling. Is the feeling constant? Is the perception constant? Is the mental fabrications constant? Or the consciousness is constant? Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara, Vijnana, the 5 aggregates. And again, a little further down, it again describes how a form can be a form aggregate. Now, aggregate by definition means a heap of things. So what is the heap? All the forms in the past, future, present, internal, external, blatant, subtle, common, sublime, far, near, all these put together becomes an aggregate. And form, feeling, perception, mental fabrication, consciousness, they become the 5 aggregates, which seems like that is me, or that is mine, or that is my Atman. So the proposition of Buddha is that, what Buddha says is that it seems that there is a self here, which is permanent, which is eternal. But if you look at these 5 aggregates, they are nothing but changing, impermanent, stressful things, which are not right to say that they are me, that I am in the form, I am in the perception, etc., etc. So that's what Buddha goes on to say in the first part of the detailed explanation. And the notion of indestructible permanent self, therefore, is only a illusion. That's what the message drives us to. And self is nothing but a fabrication due to a causality. And then Buddha starts explaining the second part, how this fabrication happens through the very famous Paticca with the 12 steps of Paticca. Again, when I say steps, I think again it's a wrong thing to say steps, because it doesn't happen one after the other. It's not one first and then the other comes after that, but it's more of a 12 facets of 5 aggregates again. So then the second part of it is that, Susima, do you see that form? Susima, do you see that from birth as is a requisite condition where aging and death will happen? So I will say it from the beginning. So Buddha starts from the end and goes towards the root, or to the beginning. Again, in a cycle, we really can't say what is the beginning, what is the end. It's just a different facets of the whole phenomena. Avidya, Sankara, Vijnana, Namarupa, Salayatana, Passa, Vedana, Tanha, Upadana, Bhava, Jati, Jara, Marana, Soka, Parideva, Dukkha, Domanassa. Those are the 12 facets. And Buddha starts with what is the requisite condition for the decay, illness, death, and suffering. That is the origin, or the jati. And what's the requisite condition for that? It's the becoming, the bhava. What's the condition for becoming? It's the clinging, upadana. What's the condition for clinging? craving, tanha. So on, Buddha goes until the root one. What is the required condition or the requisite condition for sankhara, mental formations? That is ignorance or avidya. And then from there, Buddha says, now Susima, do you see that? So from there, Buddha asks, so Susima, if there's cessation of ignorance, will the mental formations be there? If ignorance is ceased, will the formations will be there? Susima says it will not be there. If the mental formations are ceased, will there be consciousness, vijnana? That will be also gone. So on. So Buddha goes from the anuloma viloma cycle, the way it constructs and the way it ceases, the cessation and the building up of what we call self. So that happened to be a bit of a long explanation. But however, I think now we have been discussing a lot of sutras, and it's very if someone's new and if someone is even regularly listening but not very knowledgeable on these words, you might find it very difficult to comprehend. But the easiest way to do is write down these 12 parts of the Paticca Samuppada or the dependent arising, because you will find it everywhere. In fact, most of the things in Pali Canon, we see repetitions of that in many places. So when you start reading and once you start familiarizing the Pali Canon, you see a lot of similarities from here and there. Like I just mentioned, we see the exact extract of one of the questions Susima asked in the Mahasatipatthana Sutta. So we find the same extract in many places in the linked discourse, Samyutta Nikaya, about Paticca Samuppada, the 12 steps and the 5 aggregates. So these are like the buzzwords which will keep appearing. Just write it down so you will see the connection very easily. So then Buddha asked, then having known thus, having seen thus, Susima, do you wield manifold supernormal powers? Now, what Buddha says is, or what Buddha tries Susima to understand is that an arahat or an attained one, he sees that inside the form or inside the 5 aggregates, the 5 aggregates are not permanent. And what is not permanent is stressful. What is not stressful is not worth being called me or I am or mine. And all what we see is a dependent arising when there is a resulting, when there's a cause, there's a result. That is what we see. So with that answer, Buddha asked, Susima, having known all this, do you now still want to wield manifold supernormal powers? Susima says, no, Bhante. And then he repeats again the same set of questions that Susima asked, and Susima says to everything, no, Bhante, I would not want anything. A transgression has overcome me, Lord, in that I was so foolish, so muddle-headed, and so unskilled as to go forth as a thief of Dhamma in this well-taught Dhamma and discipline. So it again reveals his initial intentions, why he joined Buddha's disciples, because that he was a Dhamma thief. He wanted to call I am attained, but he was really a Dhamma thief. But he went through the transgression and he said, I'm sorry about that. Please accept my confession. May the Blessed One please accept this confession of my transgression as such, so that I may restrain myself in the future. And Buddha says, Susima, you came as a Dhamma thief, but you still confessed, and then you learned, you know what is the right thing now. So therefore, I accept your confession. If you do it, so then Buddha says, Susima, that's fine, I accept you, and please go and find your eternal release. So that's the main introduction to the sutta. So although, again, like I said, although it's in the Samyutta Sutta, it's a pretty long discourse, but it becomes long only because this Paticca Samuppada steps are explained. So like I said, if we already know that, we can just minimize it and look at the most important structure of the set of questions Susima asked and the answers Buddha has given. So the questions Susima asked is that having these paranormal powers, the divine eye, divine ear, knowing different things, gaining jhanas from form jhanas to formless jhanas, are they important, or is there something else that you acquire, discern, when you say that you are emancipated? So then Buddha gives these answers. So that's the rough summary of the Susima Sutta. Bhante.
Yeah, thank you, Venerable Ananda. I know it's not that easy to summarize all these teachings, but you have definitely done a great job. I always ask you to give a summary. Either I asked Bhante Kusala to do that, in his absence, where I ask you to do it. I also asked Venerable Bhante Sanata Vihari to see whether he could do it, but then not this time. He would like to express his opinion. But, to do the summary, of course, you have to read the whole sutra, and it shows, Venerable Ananda, you have gone through the sutra and you highlighted all the key teachings. I know it's very important to understand, and there are two the sets of liberation we are talking about. Maybe in ancient time, even the wanderers who were interested in liberation, they believed to gain the final gnosis, the final awakening, you need to have this ceto vimutti, the liberation of the mind. And so that's why they are talking about all those jhanas and the mental powers, psychological powers, supernormal powers. But at the end, it says eventually, even the Susima says, well, you don't, once you attain the final awakening, and then there's no point of going through all these supernormal powers. So whatever it is, let's see, our aim is the final awakening. Let's say nirvana. Now that's the vimutti. Now we find two terms, the ceto vimutti and panya vimutti, and so there is a notion to gain panya vimutti, release through discernment, wisdom. You need the ceto vimutti, liberation of the mind, and some argue that you don't need ceto vimutti to gain the panya vimutti. So we would like to get into this discussion. I would like to start with our most venerable Bhante Yogavacha Rahula. Bhante Rahula, would you like to explain to our audience these two types of liberation, what it means, and whether we need ceto vimutti in order to gain final awakening?
Well, thank you. I think we all know that, according to the Buddha, there was two types of approach to developing both concentration and wisdom.
Yeah.
One is called Samadhi Pubangama Vipassana, and the other was called Vipassana Pubangama Samadhi. And so for those who could easily attain jhana, like the monks living in the forest and so on, or they had the paramis from previous life to easily attain jhanas, they could attain the first and to the fourth jhana, and even go on to attain the formless jhanas, and then also the Nirodha Samapatti. And we read the Buddha's description of that practice. To attain the ceto vimutti, just using the jhanas, one has to go all the way up to realize the Nirodha Samapatti. And that's certainly not an easy feat. It's not an easy feat to attain the first formless jhana, let alone the Nirodha Samapatti. So, but in those days, because there were so many arahants and so many disciples of the Buddha who were versed in concentration, a lot of them could do that, but not all of them. And we see other sutras like the Kosambi Sutta, the dialogue between Musila and Narada, and so on about that. Now the Vipassana Pubangama Samadhi, that means attaining practicing the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Basically, it means practicing the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And we all know that within the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the 4th foundation of mindfulness has, these different categories of insight, understanding the 5 aggregates, understanding the 6-fold sense sphere, and then developing the 7 factors of enlightenment. Now, this is very key to explain this particular path. That a lot of people, some people say you don't need jhana to attain the enlightenment. But if we look at the 8-fold path, we see that the 8th step is attainment of at least the 1st jhana, but normally it's said all the form jhanas. And from that 4th jhana, one bends one's mind toward the destruction of the defilements and attaining the magga and phala. And this is often termed that we talk about the 8-fold path, but the Buddha also mentioned there's 2 extra steps. The 10-fold path, which includes right knowledge and right release, liberation. And so this is the practice of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So you start with mindfulness of breathing to gain some concentration, not even jhana, just gain some kind of concentration. And at some point you can start then practicing mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of the mind, and then gradually working. But while you're doing that, you're gaining more and more concentration. The first step is anapanasati already. And it doesn't necessarily mean that one attained jhana on doing that, but as you go on practicing all the other aspects, you're gaining more and more concentration. So by the time you reach the 7 factors of enlightenment, by the time you've reached that, the Dhammanupassana, and have contemplated the 5 aggregates and the 6 senses, then your insight, your concentration and insight in order to do that and to discern anicca and dukkha would have been very, very strong. And then the 7 factors of enlightenment, as we all know, I'm not going to go through them in detail, but it starts with mindfulness. And the 6th factor is concentration. So while you're practicing the first factors, and the insight knowledges, you are developing that concentration, and the 6th factor is the attainment of jhana. So you attain the jhana through the practice of the vipassana. Now, this is the thing where there'll be arguments about it and so on. And some people have said, you have to attain jhana first, you come out, and then you practice vipassana. But in this vipassana pubbangama samadhi practice, you start with practicing the mindfulness without necessarily attaining jhana, but you have some concentration. It's not without any concentration, in order to weaken the hindrances. That's the main factor. You weaken the hindrances so the mind becomes clear. And by the time you reach the practice of this, going through the 7 factors of enlightenment, and the 6th factor, then you gain the jhana. And the last factor, the 7th factor of enlightenment, is equanimity. And we all know that equanimity is reached by when you reach the 3rd and the 4th jhana. So in this explanation like that, through all the other previous development of the mindfulness, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the development of the enlightenment factors, without attaining jhana first, then that 6th factor is, then you attain the jhana. And it could be 1st jhana or 1 through 4. And then equanimity means the sankhara upekkha. That's a stage just before entering the stream. And so at the moment of entering the stream, or by that time you've gone all through that practice of vipassana, and you develop that concentration, you've developed the 8-fold path, you've developed the 8th step through the jhanas, And now you're reaching the ninth step, right knowledge. That's the knowledge of Sotapanna, once returning, never returning, and the Arahant stage. And so you attain the jhana at the end of the vipassana, not at the beginning. You attain through the practice of developing mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. You attain the jhana. So the jhana has to be there for the enlightenment, but you attain it while practicing vipassana. That's the important point. That you don't have to spend months and years trying to attain jhanas by developing kasinas or so many other techniques, and which many people probably would never be able to do. But anyway, you can attain it while practicing. That's the main point, the takeaway that I get from the sutra, the Buddha's statement that we attain enlightenment through discernment. And discernment is developing those four foundations of mindfulness, and especially the Dhammanupassana, because the last category of Dhammanupassana, after the enlightenment factors are developed, is the understanding of the Four Noble Truths, which is the attainment of Sotapanna. And so it's very clearly described by the Buddha in that way. But especially it's important that you gain, you need the jhana to attain enlightenment, but you can get the jhana through the practice of all of those stages that I've already mentioned. If you do it systematically and properly, you gain that jhana at the last moment. So together with the vipassana and the jhana, you can realize the Magga. So that's what I wanted to say.
No, that's very interesting. Sadhu, Bhante, Rahula. I think there's one thing that struck my mind today. You bravely made a statement. You need the vipassana to attain jhana.
It's called vipassana jhana, actually. The jhana that you attain through the development of the vipassana is sometimes termed vipassana jhana.
Yeah. So that's very interesting. I think we can shed more lights regarding what you said, and maybe we have other venerable monks. In fact, I would like to acknowledge them. Bhante Kusala joining the discussion from Boston, and Bhante Nanda joining the discussion from Long Island. Bhante Sudhammananda, you're from... this is your first time. I don't know where you're from.
It is. I'm with Bhante Nanda in Long Island.
Oh, great. Okay, welcome. Welcome. And then we have Bhante Jayasar joining the discussion from New Jersey, and Bhante Pemaratana from Pittsburgh. So I'm wondering whether any of you have any thoughts to share with us based on today's sutra, and also the key question: can a meditator attain awakening, final gnosis, without having practiced the jhanas? And of course, there are meditators, there are teachers who believe, who say to their students, you don't need to develop jhana to become enlightened. Some say, no, you need jhana. Jhana is the foundation towards the awakening, and which actually Bhante Rahula beautifully explained. And I'm wondering whether any of you have any other thoughts to share with our audience. I'm not pointing out anyone, but if you would like to share something about it. Or maybe we can ask something more from Bhante Rahula regarding what he said. Okay, there's nobody raised their hand, but there's a friend in the Zoom platform. So, Baika, you have a question. Can you please ask the question? Okay, Bhante. Yeah, you can turn on your mic, Baika.
So I'm just a little bit shy.
Okay.
So I remember Bhante Yogavachara Rahula wonderfully explained how concentration is in fact a part of the training to enlightenment. But the fact is, as shown many times in the suttas, many disciples of the Buddha, just by listening to his words, did attain any one of the four stages of awakening. And from what I've been told, is it that they actually have developed concentration, things like that in their past lives, and in that final life, it was activated when they listened to the Buddha's words?
Bhante Rahula, did you?
Oh, you wanted me to address that?
Yeah, he asked a question from you.
Yeah, I understood. Okay. Well, it certainly is possible those people, especially the ones that become monk disciples, very well could have developed jhana in the previous lifetimes. But there's also tons of lay people who attained even anagami, just listen to Dhamma talk. And so it's the concentrate. The Buddha was so captivating. When he gave a Dhamma talk, people got concentrated, and there weren't thoughts going through their mind because just the way the Buddha spoke and everything, he was so kept that they were probably close to a jhana just listening to them talk, absorbed in what he was saying. So their mind was very clear, and therefore those words were able to penetrate deeply, and so therefore they attained, one of those stages. That's just one idea.
Amazing. Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante Rahula. Thank you, Bhante, for asking the question. Next, okay, we have three hands raised by the monks. First, by Bhante Kusula from Boston.
Thank you, Bhante. I missed part of the discussion. I just finished another one here.
He didn't miss much. I think Venerable Ananda just gave the summary of the sutta.
Beautiful. I will listen to it later. But Bhante Rahula mentioned, I love his explanation, and Bhante Jinananda also liked it very much. I saw his comment, so acknowledging that. And also, we all monks, we try to practice, and we love if we can get the quick realization. The problem is, like right now in the world, everything is so quick. We have drive-throughs. We have, do we have a drive-through for Nibbana? It would be wonderful to have a place like that. But people, in general, I wonder: do we need jhanas? Do we need? Can we just attain the awakening without jhanas? These are very nice questions, and we monks do have these questions, and we also think of those people who attained awakening so quickly right in front of the Buddha by listening to just a simple phrase, simple gatha, simple verse, and we hear the same thing and we wonder why we don't become awakened. And I think what we know is the knowledge of it. And when we actually have the wisdom has a liberating aspect of it. Not every person has the knowledge necessary to have that wisdom on dependent co-origination. Even when the Buddha's attendant monk, Venerable Ananda, said, I get it. It's so simple. This dependent origination is so easy. And then the Buddha said, don't say that, Ananda. It's so profound, so difficult to understand, so difficult to see. And this, I think, this is why we have right view as in the very beginning of the Eightfold Path. Without having right view, I don't see any way that one can let go of 5 hindrances. By letting go of 5 hindrances, such as, attachment to karma, attachment to sensual pleasure, I don't know how anyone can let go of those, even temporarily, to attain the first jhana. That sharpness comes in a mind that is very wise, very very capable of letting go of such attachments easily for you to travel far. And the problem nowadays is, as we all practice meditation, sometimes we come into, places where sometimes, we think, oh, our body needs to disappear completely. With views like that, we get stuck in our path. We always expect our body to disappear. Because of that expectation, because of something we heard, we don't cultivate necessary wisdom to think of that as a mind-made view that is blocking us from progress in the path, right? So this thing about jhanas, that we all need the first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, and we do need them. And I never will say that we don't need the jhana. But most meditation practitioners, I have heard, not most actually, some say, I notice jhanas come and go, but I don't have to cultivate the mastery over jhanas. Mastering these require skill, but cultivating wisdom tells you quickly that you don't need to get stuck here. There is further, like in the Anupada Sutta, in the gradual progression of the path, as Venerable Sariputta has explained, and the Buddha has praised his awakening stage by stage within half a month of time. He noticed these and he quickly let go of them and went further. So we need to treat jhanas as things that need to be let go of and then attain further, knowing that only in a concentrated mind that the experience can be seen properly. Samahite chitte dhammang patu bhavanti. It can never happen in an unconcentrated mind. So I thoroughly believe that those people who attained quick realizations had that kind of captivating state of in their, not really captivating ability, the sharpness in their wisdom, that they were able to quickly grasp what the Buddha said, that they were not bothered by any impediments, anything that blocked their view from seeing the truth. So
maybe they have cultivated jhana. Maybe this is not just today or tomorrow. This is a long-term practice.
They were there.
Yeah, they were there. So that's very interesting. So you just confirm what Bhante Rahul has said in different way. So thank you, Bhante Kusala. And next, Bhante Jinananda from Ottawa. What are your thoughts?
Thank you, Bhante Sanafala, for the opportunity. I think all of you can hear me.
Yes, very clear.
Yeah, everything in a summarized version mentioned by the wonderful Bhante Rahula, and I think that has everything. Anyway, I just want to add something that samadhi is just like a very important limbs of nirvana and attaining nirvana, and also it requires for anything and everything in the teaching, because with restless mind there is no possibility to grasp the something subtle. So that is been very cleared by Venerable Rahula. And one sutta I want to add here for anyone to read is Samadhi Bhavana Sutta, which is a wonderful way, the Buddha explained the 4 purposes of practicing samadhi. And in that sutta, Buddha talks about practicing samadhi even help anyone to destroy the asavas. Atti bhikkhave samadhi bhavana asavanankaya. So samadhi, when you practice samadhi, as Bhante Venerable Rahula mentioned, it develops upekka. In the 4th jhana, you see upekka satiparistuddhing samadhi, and the mindfulness, concentration itself, along with that clarity of mind, is developed up to the highest state. So that samadhi is really required for all of us to get into right practice of vipassana. So I really like the way Venerable Rahul brought the point that when one attain to any stage of enlightenment, they have to have some sort of samadhi. No. Even if they do not take samatha meditation technique, actually, this division of samatha and vipassana meditation are not found in the entire Tripitaka largely. In some places, Buddha talks about the word shamatha and vipassana, but with not the without the intention of breaking the meditation into two, but just to mention what happens in the mind when one take a meditation subject and continue with the meditation subject. So later on, when the sasana goes on with so many additions and denomination, this division came to existence. And today, as a result of that, some people, this is my personal view, some people who do not like meditation for longer period, say that samatha meditation takes time, and why don't we practice anicca, dukkha, and anatta and speed up our journey to enlightenment? I think they are going to lose their time, because the first thing they have is misunderstanding about the entire teaching. So because samadhi is something necessary, as Venerable Bhante Rahula mentioned, it is in the Noble Eightfold Path, it is in the 5 spiritual faculty, 5 powers, in the 7 factors of enlightenment. So without it, I think we cannot, keep the teaching of the Buddha pure and clean. So it's very important to understand that many people in today's world need samatha practices a little bit more than those disciples in the Buddha's time, because we have no the Buddha here to see our faculties development, so that try out samatha meditation so that you can find the right tune of vipassana very clearly. I just want to let everybody know that Chulahati Padopama Sutta is a very good reference for all of us to know how the Buddha appreciate the first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, and fourth jhana. The very word the Buddha says that they are Tathagata Pada, which means if you want to see the Buddha through his teaching, just attain to the first jhana by dispelling the 5 hindrances. So you don't see the Buddha in person, but through the Dhamma, you see the importance of the Buddha and the greatness of the Buddha through your experience. And Bhante Kusala also mentioned that into a certain extent. So Chulahati Padopama Sutta is a good indication. So I think when you attain to Samadhi, you know how wonderful it is. And the development of virya, development of mindfulness and wisdom are visible for us. So that a great strength is developed there for you to practice vipassana. That's what I wanted to actually say right now.
Thank you. Thank you, Bhante Jinanda. Yeah, I think Chulahati Padopama Sutta is another great reference for those who are seeking more insight, more knowledge about these teachings. And I think it's always good to bring some references, referring to some sutras where we can find more details about these techniques. So next is Bhante Shanta Sobana from Los Angeles. Venerable Shanta Sobana, what are your thoughts?
Thank you very much, all the venerable sirs, giving me this opportunity. Actually, this is a very interesting topic today, because when it comes to meditation in the Western world and even in the Eastern, from the ancient time, people are so fascinated about the supernatural powers. And even we see in the Western world, the Superman, Spider-Man, and Terminator, and Matrix. So those movies, and it's kind of like a gave idea there is something beyond this natural experience. So somehow when it comes to the history of the meditation, even before the Buddha, that this Satara Iddhipada, the four component of this enlightenment, the spiritual path, spiritual development used to be in the world, Chanda, Chitta, Virya, Vimansa. So the intention and or the purpose and the effort or the energy and concentration and the investigation. So those are used to be with the people, and they used to look for something, but they miss that deeper, the reality of the nature. So according to the Buddha's teaching, that when the Buddha attained to the Buddhahood, that he mainly explained, even though this all the four component used to be in, still each and every human being, in the human mind, it is a nature. They all have these four qualities. But the thing is, it's in the wrong place. It's not in the right place. So what the Buddha said, if the person able to understand what is the suffering and what is the very reality of the nature, and that will give the ability to get the fully liberation. So without understanding that what is the reality and the very nature of the reality, and without understanding this, the clear understanding about the suffering, even though that we have this all the four components, that this not going to become useful. As example, if anybody, especially attaining to like high mental powers or any kind of supernatural powers, they need this all the Chanda, Chitta, Virya, Vimansa. So, and maybe it can take them to different way of samsaric journey, and eons by eons they can trap in some kind of different angle, different way of experience. When it comes to meditation, as we all know, there are two methods: tranquility meditation and vipassana meditation. So through the tranquility meditation, it allows us to experience the world as it is. And when it go to vipassana level, it gives us ability to understand how things come to be as they are. So when it comes to these two methods, one of the important things we have to understand, rather than that keep the dharma as the foreground, we have to take it as our background. Because if we keep the dharma as foreground, what will happen? We forget our inner nature, and we always try to follow the dharma, and we try to kind of like format it, and we try to develop it as a method, and we try to transform to that method. But that's not going to work according to the way of attaining to Nibbana. So we have to see the very nature of our mind. That's why when it comes to sutra, and most of the sutra, it is different person to person. And the way Buddha explained, it's different to person. And one person attaining in a different way, and another person and go through another different way. So what does that mean? We have to understand the human nature is different, and human mind is different person to person. According to that person, according to his character, according to his nature of practice, the way he understands and the way he attaining to liberation is different. It cannot be, we can't say, oh, he need to go through this, or we can't say he no need to go through this. It's different, completely different. It's going to become a new way of method for that person. It is very unique way of method. Only thing is, rather than we trying to transform to the method, it is better we understand and we become very clear with the Dhamma. And when it comes to our practice, we have to give our best to our practice. Otherwise, maybe we will intellectually develop in our mind something, but the true transformation not going to happen from us. So what I want to mention, some people may need jhana.
Mm,
Some people may not need that.
mm,
Some people may need tranquility state. Some people may not need that.
mm.
They have ability. There are some people, even there are some children. See, sometimes we have to go to school and we have to go grade to grade. We have to go to universities and understand things. And some people go through PhD and do deeper research and come with some kind of idea. But there are some children nowadays. They come forward and they say, it is like this is like this. It's different. So person to person, it's different. So if we have to keep that openness, and we have to keep that that ability to blend with the situation, with the moment. I think that is the one of the important teaching when it comes to Buddha's teaching. Rather than developing a method or format or categorizing things, and we completely open to see from different and from every angle with very clear and open mind, when we see the truth, to be surrendered to that truth.
I think you're right. In a way, I think if you read the Bahya Sutta, right, the Bahya did not have to go through all the meditation training, and he was given just, when you see, just train your mind as it is. The seeing is, hearing is, something. Then he became enlightened. He did
Yes.
not go through all these jhanas. He did not have to.
Yeah, actually, when it comes to, in the Western world, and there are a lot of people come with different reasons and from different background, they want to practice meditation. But somehow this sutra giving us a very good lesson. See this Susima came to steal the Dhamma. But he still, even knowing that why he came, still the monks gave the opportunity and the Buddha gave the opportunity to be a part of the Sangha. How beautiful that is. Yeah. And then by the time he transformed, through understanding, he transformed himself. So rather than that, the rejecting people, maybe in the beginning they come with different ideas. So, but when it comes to right practice, that is the important thing. Without tuning to, or without merge with the Eightfold Path, there is no way can attain into liberation.
Yeah.
But it person to person very unique, that how that person merge with the Eightfold Path.
It depends.
So we have to, person to person, we have to keep that openness, and we have to accept that what maybe tomorrow there is a person can attain to liberation in a very kind of like a very new way, but still he need to merge with the Eightfold Path.
Well, that's a very interesting perception, the perspective you shared. Thank you so much, Venerable Shanta Sobhana. And I'm wondering whether Susima became enlightened at the end of this discussion, so that it doesn't, the sutta doesn't mention that. So thank you, Venerable Shanta Sobhana, for sharing your insights. And next, let's go to Venerable Ananda from Cambridge, Ontario, Canada. Venerable Ananda.
Sorry to take time again, Bante, but I wanted to make a small comment. I think if you look at the entire Pali Canon, Buddha hasn't directly answered whether you should go on a path of jhana or not, has not been answered directly. But we have a lot of inferencing about that. But Buddha has told many things about whether to do meditation or not in different cases. For example, if we look at a sutta like Gavi Upama Sutta, the people are rejecting. They say we don't want to meditate, and it's not necessary. We don't want to get into 1, 2, 3, 4 jhanas. Then Buddha says you're like a cow who's grazing in one place without going to the more greener pastures. You're just grazing in one place. So go ahead and do all these jhanas, 1, 2, 3, 4, up to the formless jhanas. And like Bhante Shanta Sobhana said, we need to look at it in a backdrop where meditation was very prevalent, and they have mastered a lot of meditation techniques from Rupa Dhyana to Arupa Dhyana during that time. And again, we see some of the suttas like Attakanagara Sutra, where they have gone into all the 8 dhyanas, and Buddha says, you just going there and staying there does not mean anything, but you need to be doing your vipassana. So, and I would like to also take a personal experience of mine that there was a time that we were heavily into meditation, and I had a friend who was not even Buddhist. He was of a different faith. He was not meditating with me, but he's happened to meditate in a very nice place in Sri Lanka. And then when he was explaining his experience, I felt he's describing the first or the second jhana to me. And he did not do anything related to Buddhism, no vipassana of that sort. So it's perfectly possible, and it should be possible for anyone in the world to do some sort of a practice. Of course, there is a particular path. You can't do everything and get a jhana, but you can do it, and you can get into your 8 jhanas. There's absolutely no problem with that. But Buddha is not really interested about getting into a jhana. What happens is that what is your view, or what is samma ditti in you, and what's the vipassana that you have, is the more interesting question that Buddha asked in Attakanagar Sutra. But Buddha also says, if you are going to stop in first jhana, go to the second one, and then do your vipassana at the second jhana or the third jhana, etc., etc. So I want to add that.
Yeah, thank you very well, Ananda. Next, let's go to Bhante Sanata Vihari from Los Angeles, Santa Fe. What are your thoughts, Venerable Sanata Vihari?
Vandana to all the Bhantes.
Yeah.
I think it's also, Bhante, important to understand the historical antecedents for this sort of debate between insight and jhana, or samatha and vipassana, because according to the historical evidence, the meditation tradition was lost, for a long time. What we know now as vipassana meditation was something that was created in Burma very recently, by Lady Sayadaw, and as a force to kind of protect the Dharma from colonialism, right? And then the form of practice that was practiced before that was like an esoteric form of meditation called Barankamatana. So that was the way of practicing. So this method that we find in the suttas was lost long ago, but good thing that we have the suttas and monks that are so dedicated to the practice that we can bring it back. So, all these traditions that we have are, any meditation tradition that we practice now is a form of Protestant Buddhism, something new that has come out. So we have to keep that in mind too, right? That means some monk or someone else, this is their idea of what like the Buddha had possibly taught at that time, so it shouldn't be held rigidly, right? Like Bhante was saying, Bhante Shanta, that we shouldn't hold on to only this way, only that way. No, maybe it can be this way, maybe it can be this way for another person. So I think it's very important. There's some good books, one called The Birth of Insight by Eric Braun, another one called Esoteric Theravada, where it explains the current situation of meditation and how we got here. These are two very important books to understand. And then, we call ourselves Buddhist. I always like thinking, well, what did the Buddha do? We should follow in the Buddha's footsteps. And when we see the Buddha's practice, after he gave up self-mortification practices with his 5 friends, the ascetics, he remembered his experience under the rose apple tree, right? And he was like, well, why was I afraid of pleasure? The blameless pleasure of jhana is, I shouldn't feel bad about it. I shouldn't be worried about it. And he practices jhana. And it's because he discovers that practice, right? That ancient practice, that he is able to reach awakening. And then at the end, when he goes into Mahaparinibbana, we see again the sequence of jhana, right? So in the beginning, before, and at the end, there's jhana. And he keeps practicing jhana because it's comfortable and in his life, so. And when we see this in the Dhammapada, I believe, it says there is like no jhana without wisdom, and no wisdom without jhana, right? So they're both together. They're like 2 qualities of mind, and they're both there present at the same time. And I love what Bhante Yoga Bachar Rahula was saying, how like they're kind of working in tandem, parallel, right? And we might emphasize a certain quality of mind more than the other, but the other one has to be there too. You can't have one without the other, because I can't imagine someone having vipassana, seeing clearly into reality, or seeing things as they arise and cease, with the presence of the 5 hindrances. Like the 5 hindrances can't be there because they obscure your vision towards vipassana. Vipassana is a way of seeing clearly. If the 5 hindrances are there, you cannot have vipassana. It doesn't make any sense. So first, you need to kind of get that settled down, right?
Yeah.
And then the whole thing, are we talking about like Cheto Vimutti and Panya Vimutti? Well, another way that the Buddha speaks about like the state of nirvana is akupa Cheto Vimutti, right? So there's akupa Cheto Vimutti, the unperturbable, freedom or serenity of mind. So that Cheto Vimutti part is essential, right? That Cheto Vimutti also has to be there. And then I also remember, our teacher, Bhante Puniji, always emphasizing the practice of jhana a lot. And another teacher that I follow, Bhante Vimala Ramzi, also, that jhana is very important. So I think we need to kind of take a softer approach to all these modern meditation techniques, and also realize that, samatha and vipassana are two sides of the same coin that we need to develop. And one meditation method might emphasize developing one quality more than the other, but they both are being cultivated at the same time because they both need to be present for the final result, Bhante.
Yeah, so it's like riding a bicycle. You need two wheels to move forward. So samatha and vipassana, cheto vimutti and panya vimutti. So thank you, Venerable Sanata Vihari. Next, we have Venerable Sudhammananda. This is please unmute yourself. And this is your first time, Venerable. Very happy to have you. You're joining along with our good friend Bhante Nanda. And I have seen you delivering a Dhamma talk, and I listened to it. Amazing. So what are your thoughts, Venerable Sudhammananda?
First, thank you all for having me. And thank you, Bhante Rahula and the other Bhantes who were speaking. I agree with so much of what was said. When we talk about monks who were enlightened or laymen who were enlightened from just hearing the Buddha and not really practicing much, it reminds me a little bit of, in certain traditions, during retreat, they meet with the teacher privately. And if he or she thinks that you're close to awakening, they use a certain set of words that can be deemed what are called turning words to help open your mind. And this happens pretty often when people go to 7 or 14 or 30-day retreats in certain traditions. But barring that, it comes up, I would think, in situations where people have past karma, where they did a lot of practice. And for most of us, that's just not the case. For the overwhelming majority of people, we have a lot of effort and time and some struggle in order to attain nibbana. So while I agree that there has to be flexibility depending on the person's personal traits and such, I'm reading this book by Venerable Analayo on Satipatthana, the direct path to realization. And it really kind of helped change my practice, in the sense that although he doesn't take the position that you have to necessarily go from contemplation of the body to feelings to mind, and to dhammas, that they do lend themselves to that type of progression. And then you can use your sati that you develop through the concentration and through early vipassana to kind of fine tune where you need to go once things start coming up and you start kind of changing into a more vipassana type meditation. And I found that was very helpful for me to kind of get this basis in samatha and focus my mind, as the previous speaker just said, not eliminate, but greatly reduce restlessness and worry, and sloth and torpor and sensual desire. And when those things are greatly diminished, then you're much freer to use your sati to move about in your vipassana practice. So I agree that they're very complementary in that sense. But, we had a student here not too long ago who approached us and said that he was doing vipassana, but he felt like he was going crazy because he had so many thoughts running through his mind. And so our common thinking on that was he needs to do samatha and kind of focus the mind, subdue the thoughts, and be able to filter out what it is that he wants to go and attend to in terms of vipassana. So, in a sense, I think the Buddha does give us a prescription and a methodology step by step, if we want to take it that way, while leaving us free to fine tune it to our own personal characteristics, and also as our developed sati tells us we need to go.
Mm.
You-
Yeah, thank you. Actually, Buddha gave a methodology, the step by step. You know, when you practice the first step and master it, and how it leads to the next step, and sometimes in other places we see you don't need that first step or second step. You can jump into the last one just by understanding it. So that's very interesting. Thank you, Venerable Sudhamananda, for sharing your thoughts. We see Bhante Jinananda raising his hand again. Bhante Jinananda.
Yes, Bante, I just want to say a few words about the path and practice again. When we talk about samatha and vipassana, they are talking about two paths, depending on, it could be, they could be selected depending on personal character types. But both has to come to a junction where the needful things to be done for nirvana. Whether you are taking a samatha path or directly vipassana path, everyone has to, taste the samadhi in the Noble Eightfold Path in order to get the phala. We cannot see any indication that nobody can attain to at least to sotapanna, even while listening to dharma without, dispelling the ignorance, dispelling the 5 hindrances. If you look at the suttas, Vinivarana Chitta, some people ask the question how one can attain sotapanna and other stages of enlightenment while listening to the Dhamma. It is true that they haven't practiced jhana stages by stages, but they got into that Vinivarana Chitta, the mind that has no hindrances. Nobody can attain to any stage of enlightenment with hindrances. So in that case, they have the samadhi quality in their mind at the moment because they listen to the Buddha or any other monks, and step by step, while listening and proving themselves on the truth about whatever they consider very much in the Dharma, they are able to let go of all the 5 hindrances. And at that moment, they can destroy the particular type of craving to attain to a stage of enlightenment. So that we should not mix with samadhi and jhana, because samadhi quality come to us even without practicing jhana. So this is a big topic. At the end, I took it into consideration. But anyway, we should not mix with the samadhi with the technique, because samatha is a technique we go through for a certain period of time in order for us to get the real taste of the Buddha's path. It is really required for many people. And if we are able to practice anicca dukkha anatta, the core of vipassana teaching, it should be really good. But these people also should taste the samadhi into a great extent. Otherwise, there is no kind of taste going on, because Buddha's path is not that bad, that unpleasant. It is so pleasant. So I just want to add this part from the Buddha's teaching: Sabba Sankara Samato Sabbu Padipati Nissagga. It's a very important part to understand the the reciprocal relationship between samadhi and panya, and samatha and vipassana. Sabba Sankara Samato. In order to calm down the flow of sankara into our mind, we need to have some sort of technical practices for a certain period of time. And when you are able to understand what sankara is with the clear mind, you are able to understand the upadana and other attachment for you to let them go off, so that samatha and vipassana are 2 parts, and we at the beginning of our training we take that part, but at some point we all need to come to one point just to complete the training. That's what I want.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you, Bhante Jinananda. And I see I'm very happy that Bhante Yogavachar Rahula raised his hand. He wants to share more. I was going to ask you the final thoughts. Bhante Yogavachar Rahula, please.
Thank you. So, there's a lot of talk about vipassana. But actually, the Buddha taught the 4 foundations of mindfulness. That is vipassana. All the vipassana techniques that are popular today have been condensed and pulled out of the Satipatthana Sutta. And so I just wanted to finish by I have a little mathematical formula for the vipassana. It means mindfulness plus concentration equals vipassana. So that means what we're practicing is mindfulness, all the way up to that point of the 7 factors of enlightenment. And then you gain that jhana through that, and then that becomes the vipassana, which gives the final assault and the final penetration into anicca, dukkha, and anatta.
Yeah, that's very interesting point, Bhante. The mindfulness plus concentration, these two help the vipassana. So we can develop vipassana from mindfulness and concentration.
Well, that's what makes the mindfulness. It's like a higher octane level of mindfulness.
Okay.
We practice mindfulness, gaining concentration, and then with the concentration, it becomes that strength of penetrating vision that bursts through the final layers of the ignorance. And
yeah, but may I ask you a question? Like, can you give an example, like a simple example, the practice, maybe for our audience, for even for us, to understand this?
Well, actually, in my own teaching, I include the practice of yoga, and a lot of people may, argue that and so on. But in my practice and teaching, I use deep breathing and yoga exercise in order to get into the body. Through the practice of yoga exercise and deep breathing, you really generate an awareness of subtle vibrations, or the body vibrations, the 4 elements, which are basically cellular vibrations. And through the help of the exercise and the breathing, which is like a stronger way of getting into that, because all the cells of the body, they need oxygen and they need exercise in order to vibrate. And once you can feel all the sensations in the body, you become very, very deeply concentrated, even to the point of jhana. Now, people might argue with it, but that's my experience. But anyway, and so that is, to my way, a more direct way of more quickly getting to the level of the concentration and the level of jhanic concentration, but also to see the mind. Our body is the doorway to our mind. And so, but the reason why the Buddha explained the 4 foundations of mindfulness is we use the breathing to get to the body. And once we're feeling the body, we get into it by developing, awareness of the Vedanas, the sensations, not only the body, but other sensations too. And our thoughts are triggered off by our sensations. All our thoughts are based on pleasant and painful sensations, most of them, and all of our hindrances. So by being grounded in the body, you become a front row seat to sensation and developing subtle awareness where you can clearly see your thoughts arising. Then you can easily practice the Chittanupassana. And then all this time, as I mentioned before, you're gaining and developing deeper and deeper levels of awareness, concentration, and wisdom until you're reaching those 7 factors of enlightenment, and then finally realizing the Magaphala.
Wonderful. Thank you. Sadhu, sadhu, Bhante Rahula. So we have come to the end of the program, and I'm just wondering whether Bhante Nanda could recite the Ovada Patimokkha verses for us today.
Thank you, Bhantes. සබ්බ පාපස්ස අකරණං කුසලස්ස උපසම්පදා සචිත්ත පරියෝදපනං ඒතං බුද්ධාන ශාසනං තන්ති පරමං තපෝති තික්ඛා නිබ්බානං පරමං වදන්ති බුද්ධා නහි පබ්බජිතෝ පරූපඝාති සමනෝති පරං විහෙඨයන්තෝ අනුපවාදෝ අනුපඝාතෝ පාති මොක්කේච සංවරෝ මත්තඤ්ඤුතාච භත්තස්මින් පන්තංච සයනාසනං අධිචිත්තේච ආයෝගෝ ඒතං බුද්ධාන ශාසනං
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Bhante Nanda, for beautifully reciting the word of Patimokkha verses today for us. And it was beautiful and relaxing. So I'm very grateful to all of you, all our venerable monks, for sharing your thoughts, your experiences, your wisdom, your knowledge with us and with our audience. It was awake, and I have seen some comments how greatly they are appreciating this program and your explanation of the deep subject of jhana and samatha and vipassana. Ceto vimutti and panya vimutti. I think this was a very enlightening experience for everyone. So I'm very grateful to all of you, and I'm wishing you nothing but the longevity. By doing this Dhamma discussion, Sutra discussion, we were able to purify our mind and heart, and we made merits. By the grace and power of all these merits, may you all be blessed with long life, with good health. May Devas, celestial beings, continue to protect and guard all of you with the divine blessings for your health and safety. May all blessings be with everyone, even our lay devotees. Sabbe satta bhavantu sukhitatta. May all sentient beings may live a happy and peaceful life. So thank you so much, and I'm hoping to see you all in 2 weeks' time. Until then, stay well, and good night from Toronto, Canada. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.